I've been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live. Yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. That's Galatians 2 and verse 20. My college roommate was Richard Blaisdell, and Richard was a very passionate Christ follower. He still is a very passionate Jesus follower. And in our freshman year, he wrote that verse and put it above the door to our dorm room. So every time we walked out of that room, we'd be reminded of the fact that we were followers of Christ, that we had died. I think about that verse a lot during times like this. You see, there's so many questions and so much confusion and so much doubt and uncertainty about this whole pandemic. Just listen to the medical community. It's the worst pandemic that's ever been in the world. It's really not much worse than the flu, and you do this and you don't do that, and we've about whipped it and we hadn't done it, and you open up and you close down. And I've got a lot of medical professionals in my family, and they'll admit they don't have all the answers. Listen to the politicians, you get even more confused, because after all, we all know that this whole thing's a Republican conspiracy to get the Trump fat cats to be richer. Well, unless it's a Democratic conspiracy, so we'll all go to socialism quicker. Or maybe nobody really knows and they're all doing the best they can. Even I listen to every city government, every state government wrestle with what to do and how to handle this, and no one really seems to know. And so you're full of uncertainty and full of doubt. Even churches wrestle. Do you open up or do you not open up? And if you open up, does that mean you don't love your neighbor as yourself because you may be exposing some and raising the curve? But if you stay shut down, does that mean you don't love God because you don't want to meet and worship? A lot of questions and not many answers. And so I keep finding myself driven back to verses like Galatians 2:20. Because if you're a believer, when you made the decision to be baptized, you died with Jesus and were raised to a new life. You were crucified with Christ. And that life you live now in the midst of all this uncertainty, it's no longer you, but Christ in you. That's the one thing I'm certain of in times like this. And when I listen to this opinion and this certainty and that certainty, and nobody really knows, the one thing I'm sure of is my life is in Christ. And he did love me enough to die for me. And in the end, that's all I really have to know. So I'd encourage you to spend some time remembering verses like Galatians 2 and 20. I've been crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me, and the life that I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. That you can be sure of.